All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Let's see if I got my newer thing there. Make sure that records the right way. All right. Well, this is a sermon. Actually, it's a topic that I started thinking about 3 years ago. Maybe not three. Well, about 3 years ago. And it's based on a song that I heard as a kid. I was in, I guess, I was either a freshman or a junior in high school. I went to a Christian bookstore and found this album. The words in the middle are mine, but there's that. And it's by an artist group called Farrell and Farrell. Some of you might have heard of them. They were around in the 70s, into the 80s and early 90s. And they wrote a song that I played over and over and over again on my old Walkman. I bought a cassette, if you remember cassettes, and I had an old Walkman, and I played that around. But I was intrigued by the cover, mostly, but this song has always been something that I love, and I've been listening to it ever since. It came out in '89, and I'm just going to read some of it to you, and then we'll get into the actual meat and bones of what we got going on here. I've called this, Who's Really in Charge? Dreams from the Book of Daniel. So, the song's called Superpower, and it goes, big men, big guns, enough to blow us all to kingdom come. Another summit, another plan, and false security made by man. They like to flex their political muscle. They think the earth is a jigsaw puzzle. Too many men want to be man of the hour, but there's only one who can balance the power. Big sky and big sun, the same light shines on everyone. One God, one earth. He holds it all by the power of his word. We like to think that we can pull the right string and shape our own destiny, but we take control even in the name of love. But the ultimate power only comes from above. And the chorus goes, superpower, highest in command, holds us in his hand. Superpower, maker of it all, makes the final call, superpower. And then it goes on with the saxophone and things, anyways. But that was written in 1989, or well, probably 88 or whatnot. So a lot of you lived through the Cold War era, and you remember, I imagine, what was going on in the 80s and the 89. The Soviet Union fell in 91. That's when the Berlin Wall at least came down. And so we were all kind of in this power play. And so today, I just want to ask the question, what is a superpower? So I'm going to start this out like a high school kid would. The Encyclopedia Britannica defines a superpower as a state that possesses military or economic might, or both, and generally influences whose in general influence vastly superior to that of other states. First used to describe the British Empire, which in the 19th century extended Queen Victoria's reign over nearly 1/4 of the world's land surface and more than 1/4 of the world's population. However, it became commonly used as a concept only after World War II. During the Cold War, scholars generally used this concept to refer exclusively to the two main protagonists, the United States and the USSR. So in modern political discourse, a superpower is a nation that has the power and money to direct world affairs as they see fit. They can usually decide the fate of whole populations of people unless another comparable superpower opposes them. There have, of course, been powerful nations before this term was coined. So we don't want to overstress the fact that before the term was coined, we still had superpowers. We read about Rome, we read about Macedonia. They might not have had as much scope, nor nuclear weapons, which is a big issue, but Persia and the nation who I'd like to talk about today. In order to give a biblical perspective, I hope, on the concept of superpowers. So that's where we're going today. The nation that I want to talk about is Babylon. Obviously, if I'm going from the book of Daniel, I'm going with Babylon. After the fall of another superpower of their time, Assyria, in Mesopotamia, Babylon rose up to take its place. And the king of Babylon conquered vast lands and brought them under submission. And one of those lands was the small country of Judah. Nebuchadnezzar and his army destroyed Jerusalem and the temple, brought all the leadership of the land, the intellectuals, rulers, and wealthy to Babylon, and only the poorest of the poor were left in place to kind of farm the land. They hauled mostly everybody off, even down to the leaders and everybody else. And by all rights, Nebuchadnezzar would seem almost an undefeatable foe or oppressor. He's almost undefeatable. I mean, he ravaged through and just did what he wanted to do, unable to ever be conquered. The mighty ruler of what today we might call a superpower. At least in his area of the world, he was a great superpower. But are he and his empire a true superpower which would endure forever? Was it only by the economic and military might of Babylon that God's people were taken captive? We know that it was a judgment against them, but we also know that this was a big, strong guy. So, who's the superpower here? This morning we're going to look at 3 dreams, and I will try to be brief in my reading. They are somewhat long, and I've tried to condense some of them. 3 dreams from the book of the prophet Daniel, and see if we can answer the question that we've asked. What is a superpower, a real superpower, and how do we identify it, and who is it if we can find one? So in Daniel chapter 2, we'll just start right there. This is the summary of the context of the dream that we're going to go to. King Nebuchadnezzar, he had a disturbing dream. And he summoned his wise men to tell him the content of the dream and its meaning. And the wise men said that without knowing the content of the dream, they could not interpret it. You don't tell us what it is, we can't tell you what it means. That's all he's saying. And in a rage, the king ordered the execution of all the wise men throughout the kingdom. They were all to be killed. And the news came to Daniel and his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, or Belshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, as they were known in Babylon, that this was going to happen. They were Jewish kids, had been taken there and been put into the king's service. And so Daniel asked the guard who was sent to kill him and his friends for time to comply with the king's wishes. And we'll pick up the story right there. So he says, please, don't kill me. Don't kill us yet. Just give me some time. And so during the night, after they had prayed and implored to God, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. And Daniel praised the God of heaven and said, praise be the name of God forever and ever. Wisdom and power are his. He changes times and seasons. He deposes kings and raises up others. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the discerning. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in darkness, and light dwells with him. I thank and praise you, God of my ancestors. You have given me wisdom and power. You have made known to me what we asked of you. You have made known to us the dream of the king. Then Daniel went to Arioch, that was the guy that was sent to kill him, whom the king had appointed to execute the wise men, and said to him, do not execute the wise men of Babylon. Stop. Whoa, pause. Take me to the king, and I will interpret his dream for him. Arioch took Daniel to the king at once and said, I have found a man among the exiles from Judah, who can tell the king of what the dream means. And the king asked Daniel, also called Belshazzar, are you able to tell me what the dream was and interpret it? And Daniel said, no. Well, he just came in front of the king, and now he's going to say no. I mean, please don't kill me. No, I can't do that. No. There's no wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner that can explain to the king the mystery he has asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in days to come. Your dream and the vision that passed through your mind as you were lying in bed are these. As your majesty was lying there, your mind turned to things to come, and the revealer of mysteries showed you what is going to happen. As for me, this mystery has been revealed to me, not because I have greater wisdom than anyone else alive, but so your majesty may know the interpretation, and that you may understand what went through your mind. Your majesty looked, and there before you stood a large statue, an enormous, dazzling statue, awesome in appearance. The head of the statue was made of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. Partly baked clay, rather. While you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were all broken to pieces and became like chaff on a threshing floor in the summer. The wind swept them away without leaving a trace, but the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream, and now we will interpret it to you, O king. The God of heaven, your majesty, you are the King of kings. The God of heaven has given you dominion and power and might and glory. In your hands he has placed mankind and all the beasts of the field and the birds of the sky, wherever they live. You're that head of gold. And after you, another kingdom will arise. It's inferior to yours, but it's still going to reign. And then next to one of bronze, there's going to be another kingdom that's going to rise up. And finally, there will be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, for iron breaks and smashes everything. And as iron breaks things to pieces, so it will crush and break all the others. Just as you saw, the feet and toes were partly of baked clay and partly of iron. So this will be a divided kingdom. So there's a kingdom, and there's another kingdom, and there's another kingdom, rising and rising. But in the time of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will it be left to another people. It will crush all the kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it itself will endure forever. This is the meaning of the vision of the rock cut out of the mountain, but not by human hands. A rock that broke the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold to pieces. The great God has shown the king what will take place in the future. The dream is trustworthy and true, and the interpretation is trustworthy. Nebuchadnezzar fell down before Daniel. He offered incense, and he said, "Surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries, for you were able to reveal this mystery." So what do we learn from this? Kingdoms rise and kingdoms fall. If there's one thing, I just saw something on YouTube last night about, I was watching a historian, he said, there's this ongoing thing where guys are starting to think so much about the Roman Empire all the time. You always hear, this about the Roman Empire, and that about the Roman Empire and whatnot. And I got to thinking, I was like, yeah, I think about the Roman Empire a lot too. But the thing is, the Roman Empire fell. And so did the Grecian Empire, the Macedonian Empire, the Babylonians, the Assyrians. We can keep going back and back and back, or forward, forward, forward. There's no British Empire anymore. They all fall down. Every single one. It's an inescapable historical fact. Empires, nations do not endure forever. But the one kingdom that will endure forever is the kingdom of God. Period. End of discussion. There is no other kingdom that's going to endure. And we can divide ourselves up in neat little squares on a map all we want, but those little squares are going to get broken down, reconstituted, spit back out again. And we can decide how we're going to cut those things up and how we're going to make divisions amongst people for whatever reason, but at the same time, they're not going to endure. They're not going to be there forever. So that's the first thing that I want to get out of these dreams, is that none of the kingdoms of this world will last forever. They never have and they never will. But God's kingdom will endure. Let's move on to Daniel chapter 4. This is another dream. King Nebuchadnezzar, to the nations and peoples of every language who live in the earth, may you prosper greatly. It is my pleasure to tell you about the miraculous signs and wonders that the Most High God has performed for me. How great are his signs, how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an eternal kingdom. His dominion endures from generation to generation. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at home in my palace, contented and prosperous. Isn't that nice? I had a dream that made me afraid. And don't you hate it when you're contented and prosperous and something makes you afraid? I mean, come on. I'm so happy. And then all of a sudden, now I'm afraid. That's just raining on my parade today. It's just not fun. So I was lying in his bed. The images and visions that passed through my mind terrified me. So I commanded once again that all the wise men come in. He told the dream this time, so I guess he got past his not telling the dream thing. He told the dream, and they couldn't say anything about it. But then Daniel, called Belteshazzar, came in. He was told the dream. And Daniel heard these words. These are the visions I saw while lying in bed. I looked, and there before me stood a tree in the middle of the land. Its height was enormous. The tree grew large and strong, and its top touched the sky. It was visible to the ends of the earth. Its leaves were beautiful, its fruit abundant, and on it was food for all. Under it, the wild animals found shelter, and the birds lived in its branches. From it, every creature was fed. And in the vision I saw, while lying in bed, I looked, and there before me was a holy one, a messenger, coming down from heaven. He called in a loud voice, "Cut down the tree, trim off its branches, strip off its leaves, and scatter its fruit. Let the animals flee from under it, and the birds from its branches, but let the stump and its roots, bound with iron and bronze, remain in the ground, in the grass of the field. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him live with the animals among the plants of the earth. Let his mind be changed to that of a man, and let him be given the mind of an animal. Change from the mind of a man given the mind of an animal till 7 times pass for him. The decision is announced by messengers. The holy ones declare the verdict, so that the living may know that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on the earth, and gives them to anyone he wishes, and sets over them the lowliest of people." So that's the dream. And Daniel interprets it to say that, you know what? You are a great, mighty, and powerful king, but you're not the biggest kid on the block when you're dealing with the God of Israel. And so you're going to be stripped of your power. You're going to be stripped of your dignity. You're going to be stripped of your sanity. You're going to be out there like an animal and run away. And only after you acknowledge God are you going to get back what you have right now. I'm telling you, this guy was happy and prosperous. And now you're going to be kicked to the curb until you acknowledge who's really in charge here. But 12 months later, all this happened to Nebuchadnezzar. As the king was walking on the roof of the royal palace, he said, "Is this not the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of his majesty?" Never mind the fact that I doubt he lifted one single brick to build that place or planted any of the wondrous things that hung there or whatever. But yeah, this is me, my mighty power. Nebuchadnezzar, the royal authority. As he said these words, even as these words were on his lips, a voice came from heaven. "This is what is decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar." Never a good sign when a voice comes from heaven and says, "This is what's decreed from you." Every now and then it's a good thing, but not this time. "This is what's decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Your royal authority has been taken from you. You will be driven away from people, live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like oxen, and 7 times will pass for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all the kings on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes." And immediately what had been said to Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. He was driven away from people, ate grass like the ox. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven until his hair grew like the feathers of an eagle and his nails like the claws of a bird. At the end of that time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes towards heaven, and my sanity was restored. Then I praised the Most High. I honored and glorified him who lives forever. His dominion is an eternal dominion. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the peoples of the earth are regarded as nothing. He does as he pleases with the powers of heaven, and the peoples of the earth, no one can hold back his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" When his sanity was restored, his advisors came and sought him out, and they restored him. Well, God restored him back to his power, and he was even greater than before. But now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven. because everything he does is right, and all his ways are just. And those who walk in pride, he's able to humble. So what do we learn from this one? God was the one who set Nebuchadnezzar on the throne. He wasn't there by his own might or power. He was just a man, maybe an important man. There are lots of different stages and classes that we live in, but he was, in the end, just a human being. A person who has the same faults and the same problems, the same, if you prick me, do I not bleed? He was just a man, but in his arrogance and pride, failed to acknowledge that it was not by his strength or greatness that Babylon was built, but by the power of God who created the universe. No man is greater than God. I don't care what the caucuses say. I don't care what the primaries say. I don't care what the king is dead, long live the king. No one is greater than God. There is only one Messiah, only one anointed one. And he is not sitting in any of the capitals of the world. He is sitting, as we shall see, at the right hand of the Father in glory. He is sitting at the right hand of God. In Daniel chapter 7, it says, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream. Visions passed through his mind and as he was lying on bed. So this is Daniel's dream. In my vision at night, this is a fun one, I love this one. I looked, and there before me were the four winds of heaven churning up the great sea. And four great beasts, each different from the other, came up out of the sea. The first was like a lion, and it had wings of an eagle. And I watched until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground so that it stood on 2 feet like a human being. And the mind of a human was given to it. And there before me was a second beast, which looked like a bear. And it was raised up on one of its sides, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And it was told, get up and eat your fill of flesh. And after that I looked, and there before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard. And on its back it had 4 wings like those of a bird. And the beast had 4 heads, and it was given authority to rule. And after that, in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was a 4th beast, terrifying and frightening, very powerful. It had large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from all the former beasts, and it had 10 horns. While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little one, which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being, and a mouth that spoke boastfully. Now we're going to change a little bit here. So we've got this description of these 4 beasts coming up out of the sea, churned by the wind. As I looked, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was as white as snow. The hair on his head was white like wool. His throne was flaming with fire, and its wheels were all ablaze. A river of fire was flowing, coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands attended him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. And the court was seated. The books were opened, and then I continued to watch because of the boastful words that the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain, and its body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire, and the other beasts had been stripped of their authority, but were allowed to live for a period of time. In my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and people of every language worshiped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away. And his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. Goes on to talk about the fate of the beasts who rage on the earth. It goes on to say that their kingdoms, people have debated which kingdoms for years. I'm not going to get into that debate today. All we know is that there are nations that rise, nations that fall, as we've already talked about. And they maraud around like beasts. And they have different agendas and different ways of doing it. but they're, in the end, just beasts that rise up out of chaos. They came up out of the sea, and that's where they're from. But as I watched, the horn that came out of one of the beasts was waging war against the holy people and defeating them until the Ancient of Days came and pronounced judgment in favor of the holy people of the Most High. And the time came when they possessed the kingdom. He gave me this explanation. The fourth kingdom will appear on earth. It will be different from the other kingdoms. It will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. The 10 horns are 10 kings that come from this kingdom. After them, another king will arise, different from the earlier ones. He will subdue 3. He will speak against the Most High and oppress his holy people and try to change the same set times and laws. The holy people will be delivered into his hands for times and a half a time. But here's the important part. The courts will sit, and his power will be taken away and completely destroyed forever. Then the sovereign power and greatness of all kingdoms under heaven will be handed over to the holy people of the Most High. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all rulers will worship and obey him. This is the end of the matter. I, Daniel, was deeply troubled by my thoughts. His face turned pale. He kept it to himself, except he wrote it down. Nations here represented as beasts. Speculations as to which beasts, I've already said that part, so I won't say it again. They come up out of chaos and turmoil. In the ancient Near East, of course, the sea, as we've all learned, this idea of chaotic craziness, the chaos monsters that come forth from the deep. And they go about doing beastly things, but their time is limited, for God sits in judgment on the throne. God sits in judgment as one of them boasts before his throne, one like a son of man, a human, one like a son of man, in contrast to beasts that come up out of the chaotic waters, the evil places of the earth, comes from the heavens as opposed to the chaotic waters. So we have this contrast between the two. To sit at the right hand of God, he's given power over all kingdoms under heaven. 3 of the beasts are stripped of their authority. They're allowed to live. I mean, we still have them. We still have these beastly ways with us. We still have things that rise, nations that fall, nations that do things that aren't quite great. But the one, like the Son of Man, is given complete authority and will reign forever and ever with his holy people. So no matter what the beasts are raging about doing right now, there is one Son of Man who is in charge. The powers will be judged, and God's holy people will reign with him. Almost done, I promise. It even says conclusion right here. See, I have to use big type in order to read, so that's why I have so many pages, because it makes it easier to read. So again, we ask, from all these dreams, I would encourage you to go back, reread Daniel. It is still my favorite book in the Bible. It will always be my favorite book in the Bible. It connects the Old Testament and the New Testament in a way that I think no other book quite does. It is really that bridge between those two testaments that really demonstrates a lot of different characteristics and things. But let's get back to our question. Who's really in charge? Who's a real superpower? Sumeria? Very good. Thank you, Catherine. Got Sumeria, Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, Macedon, Rome. Then we go to, the Mongols. They raged. Mongolians. How about Russia? They've been fun for a long time. Great Britain, Japan, France. France, China, very good. The United States. Which one of them is really a superpower? They've all had or are having their turn at bat in this great history of the world. 1,000 years from now, it's probably going to be totally different. if the Lord doesn't come before then. We don't know. We don't know what's going to endure, what's going to be around, what's going to be in decline. But they have not, nor will they last forever. They will not last forever. But Yahweh, the living God, and his dominion will endure forever. The powers will always find out that there is only one who can balance the power in this world. Only one. So all of our political machinations are never going to do what the holy God can do, what the holy Jesus can do in our lives and in his church when they go forth. So who can we turn to save the world? Remember the one like a son of man in Daniel 7. Jesus uses this image to describe himself. At his trial before the Sanhedrin, when the high priest asked, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" Jesus said, he hadn't said anything up to this point. Okay, he remained silent while they accused him of just about everything under the sun. He said, "I am. And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." Directly referring back to Daniel, directly referring back to this place of equality in the reign with God. That's the reason they tore their clothes, and we've heard here's the blasphemy. Let's go, and that's why they killed him, or that's why they sent him on to be killed. He deserved death because of this. His self-identification. Pardon my usage of a very bad modern term. His self-identification is the one like a son of man. I am the one like a son of man. The one to whom all power and authority are given in Daniel 7. The one who stands in contrast to the beasts of this world. So who's the real superpower to whom you should pledge your allegiance? Who's the real power that will never fall? Paul said, "I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened." This is in Ephesians 1:18-20. "In order that you may know the hope to which he has called you, the riches of his glorious inheritance in his holy people, and his incomparable great power for us who believe." That power is the same as the mighty strength he exerted when he raised Christ from the dead and seated him at the right hand in the heavenly realms, far above all rulers and authorities, powers and dominions, in every name that is evoked, not only in the present age, but also in the one to come. That's pretty inclusive. And God placed all things under his feet and appointed him to be head over everything for the church, which is his body, the fullness of him who fills everything in every way. Jesus is the only true superpower. And as his body, the church is the most powerful nation in the world. Not by acting like beasts risen up from the chaos, not by fighting and blowing people up and taking people down and all this other stuff. That's not what we're about. That's not what our nation's about. Not using money and military might to coerce the citizens to obey, but as subjects of a loving and triumphant Lord, whose example is to give without expecting repayment, to love even those who persecute us, and to show mercy, kindness, and hospitality to the alien and the stranger. Of course, we should obey the laws of the nation. I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm saying this morning. I love this country too. I wouldn't be able to stand here and say what I'm saying if it wasn't for this wonderful place that we've had. And I'm very grateful that God has given us this country. But it's not the end all. America and Christianity are not the same thing. We are part of a holy nation. Of course we should obey the laws. Of course we should work for good in our country. But we don't do these things for old glory. We do these things for the glory of God. That's why we do them. That's why we work for good. That's why we obey the laws. That's why we do all these things, because God loves us and has commanded us to live quiet, good lives amongst those we live with. It's all about motives. We love and hope and serve and submit to authority, not because we are dedicated to a specific region on a map, but because of our citizenship, which is in heaven, and because we are part of a holy nation, which has no borders or fences or walls or things to keep people out because they're different or they're poor or they're whatever. We bring in the poor and the harassed, the abused and the neglected in this nation where there is citizenship for all who come to the foot of the cross. We eagerly await the day when the true superpower reveals himself, coming down from the heavenly realms to remake this world and to rid it of all the so-called superpowers of oppression, coercion, and death, and bring about a resurrection life and a new union in God, indivisible, with true liberty and justice for all. And if that's a nation that you want to be part of, if there's anything we can pray for you about this morning, I ask that you come and we're here for you with open arms as we stand and sing.